Hello, hello.
I mean, alternatively, oops, good catch.
Hello, hello, hello. Hello.
Kavita, we could also remove the podium once these guys are gone.
We can, in the middle of the
Yeah, not tonight.
But that'd be odd.
Yeah,
we can do it before, no problem.
yeah,
In the middle, it's a bit heavy.
What we can do?
Sorry.
Maybe maybe
I'm
if we can
alone.
bring the podium slightly, like
We can, yeah.
like this.
As much as you want. The front, everything's
Yeah.
light but the podium. I don't know how.
Hello, 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 hello. Okay. And then yeah.
We only have 4 of these chairs. We can bring more. We can take less. We can bring more of these chairs. We can bring more microphones. We can put the podium there. They can relate as you prefer. In some events we've left some microphones and then they take it and they pass it, even though they have the possibility. As you prefer. We have a total of 5 microphones, so we can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the one at the podium, I can just give you one and you pass it. As you prefer. We are very flexible. This is your event. We give 2.
Hello. Okay. Hello.
Oh, that's a very good one. They just like this.
Hello, good afternoon. I think we're ready to start. If you could please be seated. Me too. Anybody else standing out there? Probably Philip. Okay, thanks very much. Then I think we are good to start. So, dignitaries, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, here in the room in Dubai at COP28 and joining virtually for our live stream. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our side event of the Mitigation Action Facility. My name is Sören David. With a team of 25 persons, I'm actually managing the facility from Germany. As you can hear, my voice is a bit weak and I feel a bit sick, so we on the last second had the chance to find somebody and help with the moderation. So I'm quite glad to hand the word over to Kavita Ray, who is here. Kavita has been working together with us at the facility for a couple of years, actually, in terms of assessing projects at various stages of preparation that have been handed in for funding. Now she has recently moved to IRENA, where she is a senior portfolio manager. And thanks very much, Kavita, for taking over this role from me, really on a last-second intervention. And please be so kind and lead us through the end. Thanks very much.
Hello, everyone. I've been, like Søren said, Søren, thank you very much for stepping in. I'm excited because I think I've been working with the NAMA facility for a long time. Now it's the Mitigation Action Facility. I have thoroughly enjoyed every single assessment. The work that you do is absolutely brilliant. And I think I'm very honored to be here, actually, to moderate the session for you. So based on 11 years of experience, the facility has now provided support to national-driven mitigation projects in more than 40 developing countries and emerging economies. Overall, the funders have today provided close to 700 million euros to support and actually drive the implementation of the ambitious NDCs. And these are transformative projects, one country, one sector at a time, to reach the decarbonization of countries in what the Mitigation Action Facility stands for. So with the rebranding to the Mitigation Action Facility at last year's COP, we have entered a new chapter at the facility to focus on key sectors that are most relevant to achieve the climate goals that are aligned with the IEA's breakthrough agenda. I think IRENA is part of this as well, that will deepen the impacts of the facility. Based on the three key sectors of energy, industry, and transport, the facility has collected an unprecedented 300 concept ideas with this year's call, which is a striking reconfirmation of the need of developing countries for grant support to implement their NDCs. So the object of today's event is to showcase the relevance of the Mitigation Action Facility for impactful climate action, both as an instrument of international cooperation and as a means to deploy scalable projects to decarbonize sectors at scale. So in the first part of our event today, we will give the word to two of our currently 5 funders to share their views on the facility and make some crucial announcements. Thereafter, we will ask 4 panelists to join us in an exchange of the positioning of the facility in the climate finance landscape. If time allows, I think it's a 60-minute session, right, Søren? If time allows, we will end with some questions from the audience. I can see the audience really filling up, which is great, and close the event in about an hour from now. We will remain available for short encounters right after the event. And thanks for joining us in such great numbers here. And it feels so good to see so many familiar faces around. Everyone's here, settling in. And I would really now, without further ado, like to invite His Excellency Mr. Stefan Wenzel, who is the State Secretary for Economic Affairs and Climate Change of Germany, to share his words and views with us. Mr. Wenzel, the floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, distinguished guests, it's a pleasure to have the possibility to talk together and also to hear the experts on the panel in the second part of this event. Our goal and our responsibility is clear. We need to enhance the reduction of emissions until 2030 and beyond to be in line with pathways to limiting warming to 1.5. And the next years are very, very important. The years in the 20s. And so reports and projections call for an accelerated implementations of the national determined contributions to curb emissions and decarbonize sectors. So every nation has to look at the NDCs because we have the global stocktake, and I think we will see the difference, the gap between our goals and that what we already achieved altogether. And so everybody has to look to its indices, every nation all over the world, to curb emissions and decarbonize the different sectors. This is a particularly true for the key emitting sectors: energy, industry, and mobility. That is why the Mitigation Action Facility focuses on financing decarbonization efforts in these sectors. It's the sectors which are not very easy, you know. At the same time, mitigation goals and targets across the globe need to urgently become more ambitious. The Mitigation Action Facility is exactly the stepping stone needed to face up to the challenge and contribute to closing the implementation and the funding gap. With supporting the implementation of sectoral decarbonization efforts, we aim to build the base for even more ambition. This is only possible by unlocking investments, improving enabling environments, and implementing technologies at the right scale. Through the facility, we offer our partner countries a full package of support in terms of finance, technology, and capacity building for sectoral decarbonization. These supports stand ready to enhance the implementation of country priorities and NDCs in key mitigation sectors. A country-driven support mechanism is truly unique in the climate finance landscape. Saying this, the facility is even stronger with its very strong network and partners. It's a real pleasure to have UNFCCC and the NDC partnership as strategic partners also today here at the panel. And as the country case from Brazil showcases, the facility can be a stepping stone to mobilize even more funding from own domestic resources or potentially from the CIFF. The facility receives its strengths via its partners and being closely linked to and supporting efforts of political initiatives like the Climate Club, especially on industrial affairs, JET Peace, and the Global Pledge for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency. We are equally convinced that the MAF receives its strength by being a truly multilateral yet agile funding instrument, a rare combination. This is only possible due to the joint effort of the funding partners, UK, nice to see you, my colleague, Denmark, the European Union, Children Investment Fund, and the Children Investment Fund Foundation. And more joint effort is needed as the demand for financing of sectoral decarbonization is massive. This was also shown by our recent call. We received proposals summing up to requested financial support of over €5 billion. With this in mind, I'm pleased to announce today an initial multi-million pledge of Germany with funds to the International Climate Initiative. We intend to equip the next call for projects of the facility with 40 million euros to finance high-impact mitigation projects in the energy, industry and transport sector. We are therefore encouraging others to join us, and we are really pleased if we can do that together and share our vision for transformational change and for carbon neutrality. Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I think that's great news for the facility, but also I think much more funding is needed. I myself, have been lucky enough not only to assess, but also visit countries and see what they are doing. There are so many brilliant projects on the pipeline. More funding is always welcome, I would say. Thank you for these encouraging words. And now, please may I call upon His Excellency, Mr. Graham Stewart, Minister of State for Energy Security and Net Zero of the United Kingdom, to express us. Your Excellency.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Stefan, for that excellent speech and extremely welcome announcement. It's a pleasure to join you at the NDC Partnership Pavilion in what is, a tear runs down my cheek, the UK's final COP as co-chair of the NDC Partnership. And I'd like to thank the State Secretary for his words and Germany for its close partnership on the Mitigation Action Facility since 2012, so 11 years ago now. COP's an event that reminds us of the importance of multilateralism, as Stefan has said, to work together and find the scale needed precisely in order to get the finance and the technical capability where it's needed. The UK welcomes the partnerships that we have through multilateral funds, and we're particularly proud of the record of the Mitigation Action Facility, which we believe continues to play a unique role in international climate finance architecture. The need for strengthened international support for developing countries is more apparent than ever, and the demand from them is greater than ever. 90% of the global economy is now covered by net zero pledges, I'm delighted to say. It was 30% when we took on the COP26 presidency and 90% when we handed on to Egypt last year. The world is signalling that it's recognized the need to move to net zero. What we've got to make sure is that they have the technical and the financial capability to deliver it. The only way of turning 1.5 degree targets into reality is through action, and that's where the Mitigation Action Facility can make a real difference. At this COP, we of course continue to see a wealth of analysis about potential pathways to deliver NDCs and reach net zero. And there are also a range of different providers of small-scale technical assistance, many of which the UK supports. But the hardest part will be moving from targets, analysis and aspiration into real projects on the ground. And as you know, the Mitigation Action Facility provides highly valued grants of up to £20 million, 25 million euros, to countries to achieve lasting and transformative change. Through a combination of technical support and finance for demonstration-level projects, the MAF enables developing countries to prioritise action in hard-to-abate sectors and making sure that we focus on those where it's most difficult in order to get the transition going. These, in turn, provide confidence to policymakers, local communities and private investors about going further and going faster. Successful MAF projects can progress towards larger funds for further scaling and even greater impact, such as the Green Climate Fund, and we'll hear an example of that at the event today. And of course you will have seen the $2 billion pledge by the UK, our largest ever climate contribution to the Green Climate Fund, and a record contribution from Germany as well. So again, in tandem there. As State Secretary Wenzel already mentioned, the MAF focuses on energy, industry and the transport sectors. Not only is the transition of these sectors crucial to meet our climate goals, they also align with the work of the breakthrough agenda, taking that kind of sectoral architecture and making sure we have collaboration and then direction down to the granular level in order to affect real change. The agenda is now backed by 56 governments covering 80% of global GDP, and it's worth remembering the breakthrough agenda is about making sure that the clean technologies become the cheapest and most accessible and most investable option for countries developed or developing all over the world by 2030. Mitigation Action Facility already delivers on the steel, the road transport, the power and the hydrogen breakthroughs through its portfolio of projects in these fields. We hope that it can continue to target action in these high-emitting sectors as global demand for these products grows, many of which are crucial for the green transition itself. Since its establishment, the UK has provided £275 million to the MAF, and in September this year, we announced a further £100 million to support further mitigation action. And I also welcome, as we've just heard announced, the new funding commitment made by Germany today. And we know this type of targeted grant-based support is popular with recipients, and the demand for more is huge. And in the most recent call for proposals, the MAF received more than 300 project applications. And it's why I'm delighted today to launch the Call for Projects 2024. So, ladies and gentlemen, the call is out there. The UK will work closely with our fellow donors, Germany, Denmark, the EU, and the Children's Investment Fund Foundation, and we very much look forward to receiving your applications in the new year. And I echo the State Secretary's comments and hope that new supporters will join us still. If we can scale this up, and I think you're all grasping the model there, particularly where technologies, maybe the technology, it might be the location of that technology is not currently investable by the private sector. By going in with on a pilot basis, but nonetheless at a reasonable scale, suddenly you can demonstrate the investability, the insurability, the bankability of projects in places where previously that wasn't possible. That's what we're all about. And if we can do that, then we are kind of breaking down the barrier to mitigation and then allowing private finance to flow. Because we're all aware, however much public grant funding is, the 100 billion, whatever that figure may be in future, it's the trillions we need, particularly all across the world, but particularly in the developing world. So making projects investable and bankable and believable and credible is absolutely fundamental, and that's exactly what the MAF is in the business of unlocking. So events like today's help showcase the facility's unique strengths and successes, and it also shows how impactful multilateral contributions can be when taking climate action in developing countries. And although we wish to retain our agility, Stefan, as you rightly highlighted, we'd also wouldn't be averse to a bit more scale. So anyone who's in the who wants to come in and support this facility, it really is doing great work in opening up the issues and challenges, as I suggested, and then allowing private finance to flow on an even bigger scale thereafter. Thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Minister Stewart, and also the Secretary of State, Wenzel. We are excited about the renewed commitment of Germany and the UK to the MAF that provides the basis for more predictable timelines for reoccurring annual call for projects for the time period until 2026. We will get back to the timelines of the 2024 call for projects towards the end of the session. But I think for now we have 4 excellent panel members, and I would like to turn to our panelists and would like to invite them to join me here on stage. Firstly, Ms. Katja Kamere from GIZ, who's the director of GIZ. Ms. Katja. Secondly, Mr. Gareth Zahirbil, Deputy Director, Division of Portfolio Management of the Green Climate Fund. Thirdly, James Grabert, Director of the Mitigation Division, UNFCCC Secretariat. And lastly, Mr. Pablo Vieira, Global Director of the NDC Partnership Support Unit. So we have our highly esteemed panel. I will start with Katia. Katia, I think this was one of the initial first projects in Brazil that I actually also was part of the assessment, and I loved it. So it would be really good to hear from you. If you could highlight a little bit of the Potential EE project, what it is all about, why is there such a good example to efficiently contribute to the NDC implementation in Brazil. It would also be nice to have a small introduction, I think, about yourself as well for our esteemed guest here today.
That's on, right. Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to this very distinguished panel. My name is Katja Kammerer, and I'm Director for Commissioning Parties, so I'm responsible for the partnerships of GIZ. We increasingly work with partners. We value that very much. And here in this case, this concerns the cooperation with the UK government. Dear Honourable Minister, thank you very much for your kind words. But also with the Green Climate Fund represented on the panel today, and other actors and stakeholders. So yeah, I'm very pleased to be able to briefly present this great and innovative project here today on transformative investments for industrial energy efficiency, Potentialize EE. And I think for this project, there's a strong case for action because industry is responsible for more than 1/3 of Brazil's final energy consumption and 8% of the country's greenhouse gas emissions. And so until now, the energy efficiency market in Brazil has been very, very small, and there's vast potential for energy saving. This remains untapped so far, despite the existence of federal regulations and programs, financial mechanisms, etc. And there's also a limited degree of technical assistance initiatives. So the approach to transformational change of this project is to promote industrial energy efficiency investment in Brazil and to deliver a transformative push to Brazil's energy efficiency market. Yeah? So the focus is really small and medium-sized enterprises, and the project has worked with many of them so far. So 1,200 industrial SMEs have requested technical support so far. Energy audits have been committed or are under development, so almost 200 energy audits and 133 renewable energy investment projects are being prepared. So just to give you a glimpse of what is going on in this project, and the mitigation potential is quite substantial. It's expected to have directly avoided it's expected to have saved, actually, Brazilian industries more than 1.1 million tons of CO2 over the course of the project. And there's also potential to scale this up, and actually quite a good perspective for this now.
Thank you, Katja. Great to hear. Great to hear such success. And I know SMEs are really the backbone of the economy. And this was a great project. And I'm so glad to hear that it's also running very well. What we've selected, initially we never know, but I think it's great to hear the success. Over to Mr. Gareth Sayer-Bill. I believe, based on what Katja has said, that the GCF will also back further funding and scale this up. So we would also like to know, what would be the success factors to achieve that sort of scale that we further need.
Hello. Yeah, it's working. Good. Okay, yes, I'm Gareth Sayer-Bill, Deputy Director of Division of Portfolio Management at GCF's Green Climate Fund based in Songdo in Cheon. But I would like to thank my home government for the contribution, and also my wife's home government for the Germany contribution. So thank you very much. For those who didn't see, we've just on the process of closing about 13 billion for our next round of funding between now and 2024 to 27. So we're in the very privileged position in GCF because of the confidence that contributors have in us to be able to have a high risk appetite and to be able to continue to back innovators, to bring new technologies to new parts of the world. So to do with technology transfer, to do with new applications of existing technologies in new geographies, and really use maybe solutions that are already there sometimes to be able to create long-term sustainable change. One of the things I like as an impact investor, whether I'm a GCF or anything or any other fund that I've worked in, is the ability to work with other funds. Partly because it makes my life easier, because there's a good chance those funds have done due diligence and they've worked with organizations, they've built them, they've hopefully helped build better systems, build better business models. We've heard about technical assistance, we've heard about having demonstrator platforms or demonstrator technologies, and that's particularly useful for us as follow-on investors. I see GCF as a bridge from early stage investors who take the sort of risk appetite that MAF does through to impact investors and private sector. We do have the capability to invest at scale. We've done about 248, we've approved about 248 projects amongst that 13 billion at the moment. So if you quickly do the maths, our ticket size is pretty good for an investor that has a very high risk appetite. But you always have to know your investor. So we're particularly interested in not replicating what the market does already. And we're specifically in the mitigation space, then we're particularly, because there is such a developed commercial world for much of the mitigation space, Success with GCF is working out where the gaps are and where we can make significant paradigm shifting change. Now, the area of industrial energy efficiency clearly is, if you look at where carbon emissions come from, that's one of the major elephants out there that in the room that really needs to be addressed. So I think in terms of what we're looking for as a fund, we've just gone into we've just had a new ED, we're looking at a new strategy. We've got key things we're looking at, like plugging the gaps in mitigation around the world, but then also how can we attract more private capital, which I think really fits into that space. We're looking at less developed countries and economies. We're looking at small island developing states. So although some of the criteria that we talk about isn't there, in what we were talking about, I do think you are filling a certain significant gap in the economy and in the industry around energy efficiency. So I think having an open conversation with GCF to see how it might fit in, because in an investment process with any fund takes time. With maybe GCF, we were improving, but it's a considerable investment. But over and above that, making sure it's in line with our strategy, that scalable model. We realise that maybe it's at the demonstrator stage we're at, we might not have that really nailed down scalable model, but there has to be something there. But then also the partnerships. We talked earlier about partnerships arrangements, the partnerships matrix, making sure that's in place. So I won't go through the 101 things we do in diligence, but really making sure that we can work towards a demonstrator project, making sure there's a scalable model, and making sure we have the bones of something that's scalable in place is really useful. And of course, with GCF, we work through our accredited entity model. So having an organisation like GIZ in the mix clearly makes sure that we have a level of confidence in an ability for a project to be delivered as well. I'll leave it at that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. I think there's a lot of talk, I know, even at Arena, we talk a lot about collaborations. And I think if different organizations collaborate, the scaling up, it will be easier, right? Because scaling up is always the issue, especially in many developing countries. So good to hear about the collaborations. I will move over to James. James, where are we standing in terms of closing the ambition and the implementation gap when it comes to the mitigation efforts, especially to achieve, the goals of the Paris Agreement? Is the significance of the mitigation action actually likely to decrease over time, given the lack of the progress achieved and the emergence of other topics such as CCS order reviews?
Thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and thank you for the question.
As you all know, and I think the State Secretary alluded to it, we have 7 years to get ourselves to a state that we would be at 43% below 2019 levels. The ambition that's been put forward by countries doesn't have us on that track. It has us somewhere around 2% below 2019 levels. But it's not really 7 years, and this gets to the heart of the question you're asking. We have a lot. We have to approach it with the nationally determined contribution, so the nationally determined perspective, but also all options on the table. So before I speak to why some things may not be the right thing to do this critical decade, I do think we have to accept that all things need to be on the table going forward if we're really going to, have a trajectory that gets us to 2030 where we're on track, and then eventually 2050 where we're at net zero. We have to deal with a full breadth of things, including we have to ensure in this path that we have energy is actually accessible and affordable. Things like that we have to tackle with, not just the mitigation actions. Anyways, that said, innovation is going to play a very important role. We see, technology, things like CCS. But you got to ask yourself, the next round of NDCs is due in 2025. In those NDCs, of course, they'll be speaking to the 2035 targets, but I assume a lot of parties are also going to be saying, we updated also our vision to 2030 to show that we're going to accomplish this 43%. To be at a state of 43% below 2019 levels, I mean, those of us who've been working on mitigation for years know you can't do that 3 years before. It has to be thought out now, which means the next NDCs in 2 years better indicate exactly what are those mitigation actions that are going to get us to that state in 2030 where we're 43% below. And then you got to ask your question, well, some of these solutions that are being talked about ultimately may be part of the, the spectrum of things we do, but are they really what we need to be doing now? And I'll just stop at that, because in the end it is nationally determined, as we all know, and I don't want to. And there are reasons why certain technologies and solutions are going to be pursued even in this decade. But I do think we all need to self-reflect as we play our role in this, whether it's supporting the policymakers, whether it's financing the efforts, or whether it's the government setting those policies and those directions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All great points. Moving to Pablo. Thank you very much, of course, for hosting the event and all the collaboration of the years to source projects for the work for the MAP, for the facility pipeline. How do you see the action facility contributing to the fulfillment of NDCs through sectoral decarbonization?
Well, I think that's an easy question, because clearly from what we're seeing in supporting more than 90 countries, 90 developing countries, is that if there's a more pressing need from countries is for support and for finance. In fact, the number one area of request that we have is finance for implementation of current commitments. So countries have done, in many cases, a great job of updating their NDCs in the lead up to Glasgow. Not enough, we agree. A lot more needs to be done. But there was a huge effort that went into that, and we actually supported 70 countries update their NDCs, and they all raised their ambition, mitigation and adaptation. And they have better NDCs, better quality NDCs, so they're better suited to be implemented. So the urgency immediately after Glasgow was, let's implement this. And we've seen the challenges in mobilizing finance at scale to advance that implementation. So being able to demonstrate through receiving funding through the Mitigation Action Facility for these types of projects, especially in very difficult areas like industry, for example, will allow countries to demonstrate that this is possible, and then be able to scale, replicate, and mobilize other sources to be able to move forward and accelerate the decarbonization effort. So it's about being able to effectively start implementation of the NDCs, demonstrate the value of these actions, even demonstrate the social and economic benefits of strong climate action, and that will then unlock finance, and that will then unlock ambition, ideally, for the next round of NDCs, and generate that virtuous cycle that is the Paris Agreement. I don't think that there's a more effective and a way of unlocking ambition than effective implementation, effective mobilization of finance, effective demonstration of the benefits of strong climate action. And that is what the Mitigation Action Facility is about. And that is what we're hearing from our members in terms of what they need to do also to come back to the table in 2025. They need to start demonstrating effective implementation. And for that, they need mechanisms like this that will allow them to move forward in the implementation.
Thank you, Pablo. I know a lot needs to be done. It's never ending, but we all have to work, strive towards it. I go for a second round with the panel. Katja, I know I've got questions in my hand, but I have a little bit question of my own too. Like if you could expand a little bit on the potentials for scaling up, particularly with the GCF coming in. But I think it would be interesting. I don't know for myself as well for the crowd. Hopefully, many of you are implementers here. What are the top 1 or 2 success factors that has led to this project being able to scale up? I think this is a very important context that we all want to know. And if you could expand a little bit on that, that would be great. Thank you. Yeah,
thank you very much. I would say actually NDC partnership and strong partners are a clear success factor to scale a project like this up. It has to be significant and there has to be potential for scaling. And we at GIZ were extremely proud that with the support of our government, we have been accredited for the Green Climate Fund. We have been active for 5 years now, and we actually signed here at COP 3 days ago the new accreditation master agreement. So we stay engaged, we continue to work with the fund, and by now I think we have developed a lot of experience. We have dedicated capacity in our organization, and we have a strong network of partners, and that is very, very important. And in the case of Brazil, this is actually BNDES, very strong financial partner on the ground that has been boosting energy efficiency, already a longer period of time, and actually also in this context of this project has been active. They set up a first guarantee fund for energy efficiency investment in small and medium-sized enterprises, and this is sort of the nucleus for scaling this up now. So they engaged already 30 Brazilian banks, so public and private banks, to use this guarantee fund in a pilot phase and reduce collateral requirements for small and medium-sized companies in energy efficiency investment. So this really lowers the barriers for those companies to get access to these funds, and this is something we want to build on now. So the Brazilian government actually recently announced to expand the project in 2024 on the national level with their own funds. This is also, I would say, a success factor, because the GCF always asks us to try to mobilize additional funds, to really make sure that the funds that the GCF puts in is really, it's expanded, So we do that. So we are very happy that this is the case, actually. A regional focus of the project is Sao Paulo, and here actually we're talking about 11,000 roughly small and medium-sized industrial companies who would develop their own energy efficiency projects. So this is sort of the, I would say the basis for scaling it up. And then we want to work here in an innovative kind of partnership, because usually so far GIZ as an accredited entity has developed projects for the Green Climate Fund. So, and we see this with a lot of others, international accredited entities. To develop a pipeline, developing projects is quite, I would say, it can be challenging, right? Because you need climate evidence, you need data, you need to conduct studies, etc. So you need this dedicated capacity. And in the case of Brazil and BNDES, we have a strong partner that will now act as, in this case, the accredited entity. And we as GIZ go with this national institution as an executing entity. So we offer all our implementation experience as a support to this project in bringing this up to scale. scale, and the national partner is in the lead. And I think this is really the way also forward with respect to a strong cooperation of international accredited entities in the GCF and the domestic accredited entities, because it empowers partners in the partner countries. And I think this is a very nice showcase of how NDC partnership can work and how it could be further developed in the future. So very grateful that the GCF supports this first idea that we still have to develop, but we think it has great potential. Thanks.
Thank you, Katja. I think I remember that I think the Brazil one has a very strong financial institution that's country-based, and I think that's a great way to join partnerships. Moving over to Gareth. Gareth, the GCF board has recently decided to fund the Thai rice project, so this is the second project, I believe. I would like to know, based on both the cases, what are the success factors that might increase the chance of, some of these MAF-funded projects to be further scaled up by the GCF? I would like to add another question, Søren. It's like, how does, there's a lot of discussion nowadays, not only of mitigation, but also adaptation. And I know it's no longer that, but, in terms of scaling up, how do you put the two together? I know it's a Mitigation Action Facility, but something on that would also be good to hear, I think, because I think a lot of us in the implementation world, struggles with that, understanding that. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so I guess the MAF-funded project provided a solid baseline and platform for the GCF project. The MAF funds, as they've been deployed, provided this sort of strategic avenue to be able to identify gaps, to identify the argument around capability, around scalability, and then doing that capacity building. So really doing that early groundwork, the data management, so pulling out the evidence and translated that all into the core of the Thai rice project. So as it was said, it's not a matter of filling out an application form. It's having a strong evidence base, a base of data to be able to give confidence that this is something that's worth scaling up. And I think this experience is really valid for future mitigation and cross-cutting projects, in particular due to the high level of innovation of technology transfer and capacity building that's inherent in these MAF projects, which are excellent sort of building blocks for GCF projects. But that element of technology transfer and data come together, so it's really doing the hard work at the early days to ensure that we're convinced of the elements of scalability and capability. And for this specific case, the capacity building that MAF provided to Thailand is really important and can be scaled up through the GCF project, as well as the data and technology aspects in the MAF-funded rice farming systems and technology and science applied. So it's really that combination of technical assistance and capacity building that's been really useful, and that we can see in a much clearer sense as to how that really can be built off in the future. I guess on your second question, it's a bit of a toughie. I guess we can look at sectors particularly that do have both adaptation and mitigation angles to them. So some of my background, where I've done investments in the past, is in the transport sector. So and specifically around transition from ICEs to EVs. So there we've got clearly an adaptation angle to that transition, because we know that, for example, the introduction of public transport systems affects, there's a heavy weighting effect to those of vulnerable groups. So those who can't at the moment access healthcare facilities, education, all the things that we normally do as a normal thing. Having no public transport means you can't do it very well. People with disabilities or women are disproportionately affected by lack of available public transport. So that's the and of course when you enable people to to have that, it opens up far many doors in terms of developing economic opportunities. At the same time, of course, in some of the countries that are experiencing this transition in a sort of a non-coordinated way, many of the less developed countries, these countries are going to grow anyway, and so if they grow via fossil fuels or grow via renewables or cleaner EV sources, that's a decision to make. So if we can back climate mitigation activities through the transition through cleaner sources, you're going to bring about a climate mitigation benefit at the same time as, of course, as economies grow and some more economic activity, people tend to move around, new vehicles, two-wheelers, four-wheelers tend to be bought. If you can shift that towards a renewable angle, or to make sure that there's a transition to EV rather than doing it via ICE, then you've got the mitigation angle too as well. So I'm not sure I can give a silver bullet for the whole thing, but I'd like to look at sectors where if you invest in them, you can get adaptation and mitigation at the same time.
Thank you, and sorry to veer off to adaptation and mitigation action facility, but it's just curiosity from my part. Over to James. James, would you be able to share your thoughts on the experiences with the mitigation work program that was established at COP27? Are there any insights where we might be heading into the future? And is there room for climate finance mechanisms such as the MAF, aside the GCF and other existing funds?
The short answer, well, the second point of the thing is yes, but let me explain. So with the mitigation work program, we went through a couple dialogues, a couple investment forums, a lot of learning this year, both in terms of trying to make this meaningful, in terms of the parties wanted to have what we like to refer to as a safe space, to have honest conversations around the issues that they're confronting. And that does include the financing that is needed, but in a way that's not seen in the negotiation space about obligations and of the sort. So that's very positive, but we need to do more to bring in the relevant actors into that space as well, because there is more than enough that needs to be done. We know the financing that is needed to get to these mitigation trajectories I was referring to in my first question are in the trillions, and we're nowhere near that. We need innovation and in financing. We need innovation in how we effectively deploy the financing to countries to take account of their national circumstances, the risk environments, to take into account the various environmental factors or the long-term development plans of these countries, of what each other are doing, and do it in a much better coordinated manner. And I certainly hope the mitigation work program going forward will be a space where we can do some of those things.
Thank you. Lastly, I think to Pablo, I will probably have a single question round at the end for the panel. But before that, Pablo, as a member of the recently established advisory committee of the MAF, could you please comment on its role in terms of contributing to the success of the MAF, and how will the establishment of this advisory committee help steer the work of the facility?
Thank you. And first, let me thank the Mitigation Action Facility for inviting the NDC partnership to be part of this advisory committee. We appreciate the trust, and I do think that this is mutually beneficial in many senses. So we've been collaborating for a few years now. I think that since 2021, calls have included specific language about linking NDCs, long-term strategies, with the projects, and ideally building on what's there. If there's already requests coming from countries to support specific areas through the partnership, to build on that. So that has created a coordination mechanism that I think that the idea is to build on that and take it to the next level. And I say that we're both benefiting from this because we think that we can bring the insights from over 90 countries that we support in understanding what are the needs, what are the challenges, to inform the facility in terms of their calls and how to be more effective in reaching those countries and being an enabler for the mobilization of support for those countries based on their needs, on their reality. So to be more effective as a facility. But of course, we also can learn a lot, and we can be replicators of the objectives of the facility by sharing it with our members, by working with them, by supporting them, for example, prepare projects in a better way, align them with the objectives of the facility. So I think that there's a lot to build on. We believe the facility is a critical mechanism, part of the collaborative effort that we have under the partnership. And just last night, we were having an informal conversation, and we already shared some feedback that we from the partnership are receiving about the facility. And we heard a little bit about the challenges that the facility is facing in terms of the quality of the projects or the alignment of the projects with the objectives of the facility. So that allows us already to be more effective on both sides in trying to facilitate that matchmaking, to bring the right projects to the facility and for the facility to effectively deploy the resources that it has. So hopefully we can build on that and really strengthen that collaboration through this committee.
Thank you, Pablo. I think one question to all the panel. Maybe I give you 1 minute, please, because I want to open the floor. 1 or 2 questions. You know that the Mitigation Action Facility has 3 key parameters. One is transformative mitigation action, that projects have to be done within a span of 5.5 years, that there is a grant funding of between Euro 5 and 25 million. If you had one mitigation project in mind, given that there are these 3 parameters, what kind of projects do you have in mind, that you would like to see that is being supported? 1 minute each. Let's start with Katja. Katja?
Well, not surprisingly, I would have the Brazilian project in mind.
Aside from that, Katja.
apart from that, so next I think would be actually the Thai rice project that Gareth just mentioned. Because I think this project has a very innovative way to work with the private sector along the entire value chain. So it will eventually bring smartly produced rice, climate-friendly produced rice from Thailand to the shelf of the supermarkets in Europe, or in the US. And this is great to involve the private sector from the beginning, use technology, smart technology, digital applications, and still, making sure that the traditional way of rice production in Thailand is not, affected in any way. So really involving the local stakeholder, and this is kind of a great combination of having, the climate impact, but also ensuring that, it's in line with the local population needs, and at the same time, the industry, the industry along the entire value chain can be included and make a significant contribution.
And Katja, like the Thai project, what was the mitigation angle? Like, what was it like? Renewable energy technologies.
It's a strong focus on methane. Yeah.
On methane.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Going down the line.
Yes.
Okay, 1 minute. Well, I won't say one particular project, but what I will say is, because we're talking about it has to be relevant for the organization, the country or the entity, and like I was saying, this is what I want to see more of in the process, is that those projects, example, whatever project would for 5 million and going forward, it has thought through the impact in a temporal space. It's made sense. It's been assessed across the jurisdiction's long-term goals, SDG goals. It has thought through the next phase, whether it's going to the GCF or whatever, and it's done smartly. And I'm not saying that we all haven't contributed. We haven't been contributing to smart projects, but that space needs to be working much better. And I really appreciate the work NDC Partnership. We've been working closely over years to do exactly these things, as you heard, to increase the quality, the relevance, the forethought. Because we can't afford to lose any time, and we know the money is not enough, so we have to be effective. And so it's not one project, but I'd like to see that's the kind of projects I would like to see.
Thank you. Pablo.
Thank you, and I very much agree with and I'll say also more in the generic, but yeah, that connection to the NDCs demonstrate the value of the NDCs so that we can build on them, high impact. But also, I would really like to see smaller countries that struggle to mobilize support, finance, to be benefited, and maybe the hardest sectors also, like industry, demonstrated how this can be, because that really leads to transformational change.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I've had a long-term interest in achieving SDG 7, so universal energy access, and particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. Now, I've got 5 million, so I'm going to have to leverage a lot more money in. But I'm not talking all of sub-Saharan Africa yet. Again, creating demonstrator projects that brings in partnerships, whether it's from industry, from electric generators, from other organizations that can provide universal energy access via a number of things, from solar home systems to solar PV, to productive uses of energy for industry, for productive use of energy for sewing machines or diesel generators or whatever creates small businesses. But it's particularly of interest, and one might say it's not that great a mitigation, because if the energy isn't there, then it's not creating the greenhouse gases. But again, coming back to the fact that economies grow, do you want to grow them via fossil fuels, or do you want to grow them by renewables? So if we can put the option there and get people to leap over technologies, that's really interesting to me. But what we lack is a cohesive approach in energy access that looks at an area, a geography, and looks at all the solutions and brings all the solutions together. I don't want to sell solar home systems, I don't want to sell solar PVs, I want to get people to be able to watch Premiership football on their telly. Basically, we want the output of what energy gives, not the energy, not the electrons themselves. So how can you bring all players together to be able to provide the services that you and I rely upon? And that 5 million will coalesce all the capital that's needed for that in my dream world.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, the panel. We're very good on time. I would like to open it up to the floor. I see the floor is engaged, haven't walked out, which is a good sign. So any questions? If any, yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Katja Eisbrenner. I'm working for Guidehouse. The term technology transfer has fits right here, or at least the technology transfer is needed. Actually, it has been quiet a little bit over the past years on this. So the question is it the moment to bring it back? And we know this climate community is very good with new terms, because some have also maybe a bit of baggage. So also having James here would be really happy to hear, is this what we should pursue and say now it's time to bring it, or do we need a new term that nobody's scared? So I would be happy to hear about that.
Hi. I had another question until you came up with the energy access, Gareth. So maybe I could ask that question as well. Could we have this mitigation across many pathways, not just climate? For example, if you have mitigation across reducing asthma by having electric transportation and so forth. So that's one question. The other question I'm asked to ask is, in terms of energy access, I think we have moved on from solar home systems. Productive use of energy is required. And there are exemplar projects that are around, and they are really looking for funding around this. And one of the projects that we are looking at the moment is actually how you deliver mini-grids around farmlands, where you not only provide power to the villages around, but also provide water pumping, cooling, and so forth, an integrated approach to allow that to happen. So I'll have you 5 million.
Any other questions? Or we go dive into the answers, I think, yeah. On technology transfer, who would want to take that in?
I'll say a few words. I welcome others to say. I'm not certain about changing what we're doing. I think we need to continue to push for this issue. But I think we also need to look at it in a broader way. I know there's a lot of criticism about what certain countries are doing in terms of they're trying to incentivize change, or they're trying, and I'll be very, whether it's the IRA, whether it's Fit 55, the Green Deal, all these things. But there's an element of that that's going to drive change if we adequately involve the private sector. And there are going to be benefits that are going to go beyond the borders of where these things are happening. And I think that's the kind of technology transfer, innovation, expansion generation of ideas that will come about. I know there are issues there about the fair and the just, but we need to look at the positive side of it and look at how do we use that? How do we do it in a way that it drives the transfer? I mean, there are some economic studies out there that are showing you're going to have several factor impact outside of the jurisdictions that are doing these things, and we need to look at that and say, what does that mean for technology, and how do we ensure that happens? Is very interesting for me, being an economist. But so, thank you.
Thank you very much. I think also on top of technology transfer, I think we should also talk about business model, market transfers, because that's very important. I recently did a study on geothermal, and we often talk about south-south transfer, but the north-south transfer is very interesting. That we found actually in Iceland, there was this, how Iceland started the manufacturing and O&M. I mean, that's an amazing story, like that most of us don't know about. So very often, even countries in the global north have really interesting stories, and I think we should also learn about the business models, not just the transfer models. I feel that's very important, at least in the renewables and energy efficiency field. On energy access,
yeah, I guess it's a comment more than anything.
Yes.
So yeah, I agree. You referred mitigation to asthma, so you could look at that as a co-benefit. I mean, if you look at clean cooking, for example, we know what the benefit on how many people die from poor cooking scenarios. So that's when I talked about solar, empowering people's homes, brings about educational benefits. If you reduce food waste by cold chain, off-grid or on-grid, then clearly that's going to have health effects on people as well. So whether you look at it as mitigation aspects or sort of co-benefits, then that's absolutely the case. And when I facetiously said I want people to watch Premiership football, that's again coming to outcomes. You're talking about pumping water. So we're looking at the outcomes of the thing, not just having a switch flick for somebody. So
I think in energy access, Gareth, it's really a challenge, right? I see May here. May is from Malaysia. We spent like an hour this morning talk about the last mile, in Malaysia. How do we do that? How can we club together? Can we use the old CDM mechanisms and redo it? I think there's so much to do in the energy access space, particularly even for developed countries. There are still the last 5 or 10% indigenous communities. And when we talk of a just energy transition, I feel like we need to do a lot more on that. I hope the Mitigation Action Facility will also take into consideration, because I know markets are important and many times, but sometimes when we talk of a just energy transition, I feel like we need to take sometimes not just the market into consideration, but is this market a just market, right? What are we doing for the indigenous communities? What are we doing? And we've been talking like with Indonesia, with Malaysia, with some of these countries that we think are way ahead, but there's so much more to do. Anyway, I could go on and on about that. I wouldn't go on about that. If there's no more, I will leave it to Søren to close the session, please, Søren. And I think there's a slide, Søren, that we need to show on the next.
Thanks so much, Kavita, for leading us through the session. I can only say at the end that the call will be open from the 11th of December on the web-based platform that you can find on our website. So we're very much looking forward to new concept ideas as part of the 2024 call. And as you can see here, we will have also a webinar coming up and virtual Q&As. The timelines are short for this call. So it will be open up until the end of February only, so there's limited time available. So we hope that still we will collect an equally high and interesting number of concepts under this 2024 call. Thanks again to all our panelists for joining us today for this discussion. Thanks to Kavita for moderating on such short notice. Thanks for the audience here in Dubai for joining us and for the virtual participants. I wish you all a pleasant day. Thank you. Goodbye.